Hello there, I'm Amanako, and thanks for joining me this Thursday on 7Edition. The headlines. Muslim leaders deliver defiant speeches against world powers. Also tonight, US House of Representatives votes to impeach President Donald Trump. The Prime Minister in his keynote address said the KL summit is not meant to discriminate or isolate anyone, but to solve problems plaguing the Muslim world, which he described as in a state of crisis. Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad said it was a small start, and if these ideas, proposals and solutions are acceptable and proved workable, then Malaysia hopes to take it up to a larger platform for consideration. Tun Dr. Mahathir, who is the chairman of the summit, said among the problems faced by Muslim countries are governance and development, which will be discussed at the highest level. The world's perceptions of Islam, the rise of Islamophobia, the decline of the Islamic civilization, and reforms in governance needed by Muslim nations were on the summit agenda.
It is imperative that we try and focus on the development of our country so that we can be strong and can help defend the Ummah, which is what we are asked to do. The Ummah are being oppressed, being killed, expelled from their own countries, dying at sea and on land as they try to escape. Ladies and gentlemen, we may see a bleak picture painted, but it doesn't mean that all is lost. We have to reflect on the past.
The Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, on Wednesday mounted a veiled attack on the summit, saying such gatherings would weaken Islam. The Islamic body believes it was against the interests of the Islamic community to convene meetings outside the Saudi-based organization, which has for decades acted as the collective voice of the Muslim world. About 20 countries sent leaders or delegations to the summit, though all 57 members of the OIC had been invited. The more than 500 delegations attending are also academicians, politicians, and NGOs from 56 countries. Meanwhile, Muslim leaders joined the Prime Minister in voicing their views on issues concerning the Muslim world. Two of them also spoke out today against the United Nations Security Council and Washington in their speeches. Our reporter, Wan Aizul Islam, has the highlights from today's roundtable discussion.
Muslim leaders and delegates gathered at the Kuala Lumpur Convention Centre, KLCC, this morning for the opening ceremony. Among some of the VIPs in attendance are leaders of Islamic countries, including the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim Hamad Al Thani, President of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and President Hassan Rouhani of Iran. The highlights today were the defiant speeches by two leaders. Erdogan called the United Nations Security Council outdated as it did not protect the interests of the Muslim nations, but only the interest of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. He also called for platforms such as the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, to be updated to increase its effectiveness. Meanwhile, Rouhani attacked Washington's crippling sanctions against Iran. He said the Muslim world needed to be saved from the domination of the United States dollar by greater financial cooperation between the Islamic countries. This summit aims to address issues concerning the Muslim Ummah and to find workable solutions to various issues through dialogue, sharing sessions and discussions among the leaders. The discussion will focus on 7 main pillars, with topics such as trade and investment and integrity and good governance. 2 roundtable discussions were also held today among the participating leaders. Muslim leaders, intellectuals and scholars discussed and exchanged ideas during the roundtable session with the aim to produce new, creative and viable solutions to the problems facing the Muslim Ummah. Among the key topics discussed during the session include the abuse of power, corruption and being accused of becoming the breeding ground for terrorism. Wanisul Islam reporting from KLCC for 7Edition.
We decide to source our needs from Muslims.
Flooding in Johor claimed another victim when a disabled teen slipped and fell while fishing this afternoon. 18-year-old Muhammad Muhyiddin Muhammad Nasir was found dead about 50 meters from the riverbank in Kampung Baharu, Sungai Telur, Kota Tinggi. He and a friend Muhammad Haikal Iskandar Halim were on a bridge when they fell into the river during high tide. Muhammad Haikal was saved by passerbys, but Muhammad Muhyiddin was not so lucky. The strong current swept him away before he drowned. His body was found by a rescue team with the help of villagers. Meanwhile, the number of displaced flood victims in Terengganu and Kelantan have declined since this morning. In Kelantan, the number of victims declined by more than half to 2,076 from the over 4,000 recorded this morning. Pasir Mas has the highest number of displaced victims at 1,298 in 9 relief centres. The situation in Terengganu also improved with only 38 victims in Dungun compared to 129 earlier in the day. Flood relief centres in Pahang have also started closing down, leaving only 4 open for 386 victims in Temerloh, Rompin and Beira. Down south in Johor, flood waters have also receded, but there were still 1,330 victims in Batu Pahat, Kluang, Kota Tinggi, Segamat and Pontian. 13 flood relief centres are still open in Segamat, as the district has the highest number of victims in the state with 562. Over in Sabah, there were 283 victims who were evacuated from floods in the Tenom district. As of 6 p.m., there are 4,113 victims affected by the flooding in 5 states. A man and his 3-year-old child were killed in Taman Dahlia, Pasir Gudang, Johor after colliding into another vehicle this morning. 2 others, a man in his 40s and a 1-year-old infant, were also injured in the 9 a.m. incident. A team of 11 rescue workers were dispatched to the scene. Authorities said the identities of the dead have yet to be ascertained. Their bodies were sent to the Sultan Ismail Hospital for post-mortem. The injured, meanwhile, have received treatment in hospitals. The cause of the accident is still under investigation. In the courthouse, former Prime Minister Datuk Seri Najib Razak told the High Court that he could sense there was enough money in his bank accounts before he issued cheques in the millions of ringgits from them. Testifying at his SRC trial today during cross-examination by ad hoc prosecutor Datuk V. Sita Baram, the former Premier said he would only ask his former secretary to check on the account's balance. The late Dato' Azlin Alias would purportedly check with SRC International CEO Nik Faisal Arif Kamil on the balance, but they did not tell him the exact amount left in the accounts. The Pekan MP also said he never contacted Nik Faisal directly, even though he was the mandate holder for Datuk Seri Najib's accounts. He also believed the monies in his bank accounts came from a donation by an Arab royal family and never questioned the funds until it became an issue. Datuk Seri Najib also agreed with Datuk Sitambaram's suggestion that he wrote cheques amounting to millions of ringgit for political use. The next hearing is on January 6th next year. In the meantime, the case involving a dispatch rider charged with supporting terrorist group LTTE has been transferred to the Kuala Lumpur High Court. Sessions Judge Rosida Rosli allowed the application by Deputy Public Prosecutor Muhammad Firdaus Abu Hanifah. However, no date was set for mention. At today's proceedings, lawyer A. Mathan's bail application for client was also rejected by the court, as it was not within its jurisdiction to hear bail. 38-year-old S. Tiran was charged with possessing items linked to LTTE in Kampung Paya Pulau, Segabat on October 10th. He is facing a jail term of up to 7 years or a fine upon conviction. In other news, a former Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Commission (MCMC) Post and E-Commerce Division Deputy Director pleaded not guilty at the Kuala Lumpur Sessions Court to 3 counts of corruption. Muhammad Iskandar King is accused of accepting 87,000 ringgit in bribes for approving a Universal Service Provision (USP) program. The 42-year-old allegedly received 50,000 ringgit from Golden Venture Sdn Berhad Director Muhammad Azuzi Muhammad Kamil as an inducement to secure a USP contract. He is also accused of receiving 2 checks totaling 18,500 ringgit in 2015, also from Muhammad Azuzi. The court set bail at 20,000 ringgit in one surety. The next court date is set for January 16th. The Sarawak Marine Police have foiled an attempt by 2 men to smuggle 30,000 ringgit worth of liquor into the state. Authorities said about 200 boxes containing 4,800 bottles of liquor were found behind a lorry hidden under a green canvas sheet during an operation at Jalan Setia Raja, Tabuan in Kuching yesterday. The 2 men are in custody over the case. From January to November this year, a total of 37 arrests and seizures were made with an estimated value of 7.4 million ringgit, 8 times higher than the previous year. Huawei Malaysia, in partnership with Primeworks Studios PWS, launched the Huawei Film Awards to encourage and inspire a new generation of creative filmmakers. According to PWS CEO Dato' Ahmad Izham Omar, this is an opportunity to uncover new storytellers who can use the tools and apps available on Huawei smartphones. The launch of the Huawei Film Awards at Pavilion Shopping Centre in Kuala Lumpur yesterday featured films from 5 different directors who used the Huawei Mate 30 Pro instead of a professional camera.
Inilah peluang anda semua untuk cuba menjadi pengkarya, menjadi penerbit filem, menjadi orang kata director, film director kan. Tetapi ia juga ialah dari situ kita dapat menilai dengan lebih bagus lagi sebab sekarang ni terbuka pada ramai orang. Kalau tidak, orang selalu fikir kalau nak jadi film director kena ada kamera besar, kena ada tu, tapi sekarang tak perlu. Dengan adanya Huawei Film Awards ni, kita agak teruja jugalah sebab kita mungkin dapat jumpa director baru yang hebat yang mungkin dia pun tak tahu dia hebat kan. Jadi kita very excited.
Actually, this is the first time, and in the future, every year Huawei will holding this kind of mobile film award. Actually, in this industry, Huawei is the first smartphone brand to hold this kind of smartphone mobile festival. All the new age directors or content creators can upload all their short films shortened by Huawei smartphone and can be participate in this competition. And so the grand prize is around $20,000, and we will close this competition in February.
The award is now open for entries to aspiring Malaysian filmmakers to send in their 5 to 10 minute short films with the theme Empowering Your Possibilities. The best Asia Pacific film at the Huawei Film Awards stands to win the grand prize of $20,000 US. For more information on this Asia Pacific film competition, you can visit Huawei's website. We'll be taking a short break, but coming up, hundreds arrested as protests intensify across India. Stay tuned for more. Thanks for staying with us. Now on to the foreign front. Donald Trump has become the 3rd U.S. president in history to be impeached by the House of Representatives, setting up a trial in the Senate that will decide whether he remains in office. The Democratic majority House voted on 2 charges: that the president abused his power and that he had obstructed Congress. The House vote came 4 months after a whistleblower blew open the scandal of Trump pressuring Ukraine's president to investigate his potential White House challenger in 2020, the veteran Democrat Joe Biden. After a marathon 10-hour debate, the first article was passed by 230 votes to 197. Lawmakers also voted 229 to 198 to approve the second article of impeachment facing Trump for obstructing the congressional probe into his dealings with Kyiv. Meanwhile, Trump rallied against the impeachment vote during a rally in Michigan, saying the radical left are consumed by hatred.
But they've been trying to impeach me from day one. They've been trying to impeach me from before I ran, okay? Because if you remember, when I ran, I went immediately to number one, never came off number one. But they have one thing, two things. They're vicious. They're the most vicious people. The Republicans aren't as vicious. They may learn to be vicious after going through this stuff. But the other thing, the Democrats always stick together. Now think of it. 3 Democrats went over to our side, no Republicans. It's unheard of.
Despite testimony from 17 officials that Trump leveraged his office for political gain, the president maintained his innocence throughout the impeachment inquiry, denouncing it as an attempted coup and an assault on America. Trump will now stand trial in the Senate, where his Republicans hold a solid majority and are expected to exonerate him. Mobile services have been suspended in parts of Delhi, India, on Thursday, as part of government efforts on clamping down protests over the new Citizenship Amendment Act, CAA, which have intensified nationwide. Meanwhile, police detained hundreds of protesters in the capital where Section 144 is in place, as demonstrators defied bans on assembly against the CAA, which is seen as discriminatory against Muslims, following days of rallies, clashes and riots that have left 6 dead. 2 major telecom firms, Vodafone and Airtel, announced that they had cut services on mobiles in some parts of the city on government orders, and mobile operator Jio is reported to have followed suit. At least 14 metro stations were shut in the capital, including one near police headquarters, besieged by protesters earlier this week, as some roads in the megacity were blocked, causing immense traffic jams. Authorities have banned gatherings in areas including Uttar Pradesh, home to a large Muslim minority, as well as New Delhi, Hyderabad, Bangalore and Chennai, all of which have seen protests in recent days. The new law eases citizenship rules for people fleeing persecution from 3 neighboring countries but excludes Muslims, stoking accusations that Prime Minister Narendra Modi wants to reshape India as a Hindu nation and creating unease abroad. A state of emergency was declared in Australia's most populated state of New South Wales as a record heat wave fanned unprecedented bushfires. According to NSW Premier Gladys Berejiklian, the 7-day state of emergency, which is the second declared in the state since the bushfire season began early in September, was due to catastrophic weather conditions. About 100 fires have been burning for weeks in the drought-plagued in the region, with half of them uncontained, including a mega blaze ringing Sydney, covering Australia's biggest city in a haze of toxic smoke. Temperatures are expected to near 50 degrees Celsius in South Australia and peak at 45 degrees in the western suburbs of Sydney, while turbulent winds of up to 100 kilometres are expected to fan bushfires. The country experienced its hottest day on record Tuesday, with the average nationwide temperatures reaching 40.9 degrees Celsius. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, expects Malaysia's economy to grow at 4.5% next year, driven by domestic demand. Meanwhile, continued trade tensions between the US and China are expected to have an overall adverse impact on Malaysia's growth, and inflation is expected at 2.1%. It said the risks to the growth outlook are on the downside, given that on the external side, Malaysia is vulnerable to escalating trade tensions, an abrupt deterioration in market sentiment towards emerging markets, and weaker than expected trading partners' growth. Domestically, the downside risks are a sharp drop in real estate prices or a deterioration in household debt serviceability. Malaysia's monetary policy framework has performed well, delivering price stability and robust growth in recent years, while the current monetary policy stance is appropriate in the context of a closing output gap. Bursa Malaysia ended lower today on continued profit-taking in most index-linked counters as investors' appetites for equities turned unfavourable ahead of Christmas holiday after a brief window dressing yesterday. Meanwhile, Bursa Malaysia Securities announced earlier that trading on the bourse was halted at 4:45 p.m. unexpectedly due to unspecified problems, and the matter is currently being investigated. The benchmark FBMK LCI fell 3.1 points to end at 1,596.01 points compared with Wednesday's close. On to stocks to watch. Analysts continue to favour Serba Dynamic Holdings Berhad as it is one of the largest oil and gas service equipment providers in Malaysia, backed by its sturdy order book comprising of dozens of jobs from local and overseas that will provide long-term earnings visibility. Heading into the new year, the company aims to grow their existing order book, currently at approximately 10 billion ringgit, into 15 billion by end 2020. Next and last on the list. Yinson Holdings Berhad is anticipated to see a sizable earnings jump expected in financial year 2021, given the commencement of FPSO Helang and FPSO Abigail Joseph. Meanwhile, the company is still in contention of several project tenders after recently clinching a contract award for the Marlin FPSO in Brazil, where materialization of any of these contract awards could provide some catalyst to the counter. More to come on 7Edition. Shirtless man stirs drama on Jalan Bukit Bintang. The details after the breather. Now let's hop on to Clickbait, where we take a look at what's trending and making the rounds in the cyber world today. Now, in case you haven't heard, a Bangladeshi man went viral since Tuesday for climbing on top of a road signage on Jalan Bukit Bintang, causing an hour-long traffic in the capital, prompting authorities to rush and apprehend him while witnesses gather and record the drama. Visuals of the incident circulated on various platforms, raking in hundreds of thousands of views. It was learned that the drama unfolded around 1:30 p.m. when passersby spotted a shirtless man standing and parading on top of the metal frame of the signage. Fearing for his safety and motorists below, authorities were called in to handle the situation. Police and firefighters arrived at the scene a few minutes later and tried to persuade him to come down, but he turned violent by kicking at the approaching rescuers. It took more than 30 minutes for the authorities to detain him. As a large crowd started to gather to watch the drama, several patrol cars arrived and cordoned off the area to allow for the rescue effort to commence. A spokesman from the City Fire and Rescue Department said the man has been handed over to the police for further action. Traffic along Jalan Bukit Bintang returned to normal by 2:30 p.m. Now updated as of 7 p.m, here are the top trending topics and searches on the internet today.